Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Fisher, and I use he, him, his pronouns. And I am one of the Camp Pride interns for this summer. The impact of Camp Pride, Changing Lives Since 2007, is our first panel of recent attendees of Camp Pride to share their experiences as leaders. So Camp Pride is obviously really happy to have all of them. And Camp Pride is the nation's oldest and longest running queer camp for college students in the country, building future leaders and creating positive change on campus. The goal of this panel is to learn more about Campus Pride and the Camp Pride program from the former alumni from the last 5 years. So as they're coming into the studio, I would really like to thank them for sharing their experiences today and coming on. Oh my gosh, that was so cute. So everybody's here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna start by going around and introducing everyone, starting with your name, pronouns, and where you went to college or go to college. So I'm gonna say your name and then you can just do that introduction yourself. So Samael, do you wanna go first?
Yeah, I went to or am going to college at the University of Minnesota at the Twin Cities.
Okay, great. Leanne, do you want to go next?
Hi, yeah, I'm Leanne, she, hers. I went to Davidson College and I went to Camp Pride in 2017.
Okay, great. Let's go with Nat next.
Should probably unmute myself, sorry. I'm Nat. I usually just default to they, them, theirs pronouns. And I went to the University of Delaware for 4 years.
Okay, great. And then Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric. I prefer they, them pronouns. I graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha in 2017 and attended Camp Pride in 2015.
Okay, great. So we're just going to hop right in with the first question. So what was your Camp Pride experience like when you were there? So we're going to start with Samael and then go around if we can.
So my experience, I actually had just gotten out of a really toxic relationship that I was in for about 2 years. And so for me, it was just a really great experience to kind of get out of my own head and focus on something that was more about the community and about the people around me than it was about me. And so I just had an absolutely amazing time. I met such amazing people while I was there. And so many people had such big effects on me and really kind of changed my perspective on what being a leader and an activist really is. And so for me, it was just all around positive and such an uplifting experience.
That's really great. Leanne, do you want to also answer the question?
Yeah, same, because I grew up in a really small town where I was the only gay kid around, and then being able to go to Camp Pride and then have an entire community there that I've never had before was really amazing. So
Nat?
Yeah, I mean, definitely echoing what everybody else already said. It was really special for me because I kind of know since I was maybe 14, 15 years old that I wanted to do LGBT activism for the rest of my life. And it was really the first time that I was just completely surrounded by people from all different parts of the country that had the same, mentality and the same kind of goals that I did. And who all had different stories, but we were able to share and support one another. And yeah, it was motivating and empowering and just really special, honestly.
That was really beautiful. Eric, do you want to talk about it?
I think about my Camp Pride experience almost every other day. From the moment I got off the plane and I stepped on foot at campus, as soon as I started talking to people, I just felt so welcomed and I felt so just embraced without people needing this or that from me, just unconditional embrace, unconditional love, in a space the likes of which I'd never really experienced before. But it wasn't all fun. It was very challenging. You meet a lot of very intellectual people. You meet a lot of very stimulating people that, if you're not careful, you can really miss out on. And I really tried to dig in, and I met so many people. And even to this day, there's people that I met at camp that I've talked to yesterday that I play online with. I have on Facebook. So it's lifelong relationships that I've formed from my experience. So forever thankful that my university paid my way to go there. And so it's an experience that I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's really great. And like kind of going off of that, the next question is, what were some of your favorite parts of your camp experience? So again, we're going to start with Samael and kind of go around.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite parts was like when you got the choice to go to different not like classes, but like little sessions to just learn about different things. And one that like really stood out to me was Delphine was doing a like one based off religion, and I've always struggled very much with religion. My family is all Christian, and I can't even step foot into like a church without feeling like I'm gonna have a panic attack. And so that was like a really nice way to kind of ease into like different religions out there, and just kind of to like open me up to the idea of like maybe there is something out there that I can like try out or seek out for myself. And so like just being able to have that choice to go to those different sessions and like learn different things about everything was really like interesting and empowering.
That's great. Leanne?
I think my favorite part was just getting to know the people, because it's a very unique experience that like every single year, it changes. And just being able to learn about like their unique experiences and sort of put yourself in their shoes. And like you can grow a lot as a person having that opportunity. So yeah, I think that's what I remember the most about it.
Great. Nat?
Yeah, I think my favorite part was the sort of social learning experience. I don't know how to explain it, but like, so I was a women and gender studies major in college, and the reason for that is because I'm like just super nerdy, like talking about gender. That's like all I talk about every day, 24/7. And it kind of reminded me of the way that Robin Oakes, who is so involved in Camp Pride, talks about sexuality and bisexuality. Like, we just love hearing people talk about their own gendered experiences and things like that. And it was so cool moving even beyond the sessions. Like we had, big group sessions and breakout sessions and things like that of course are integral to Camp Pride. But those moments in between, like meal times and like talking between sessions and taking breaks and hanging out with people and spending time in the dorms before and after, like, I mean, you learn just as much in those moments than, as you do in those like sessions that are more formally structured. So those moments to me were invaluable, because I just got to learn so much hearing people just talk about what they do on campus and what their passions are and how it all relates to advocacy and who they are and their identities and things like that. So it was a very unique experience that way.
Nice. Eric?
Nat, I think you said it. There's a lot of sessions. It's a very formal, very structurally planned. But for me, like the best moments was getting to bond with just people that were so passionate for change. And not only change, but passionate about discovering their identity and who they really are in a world that doesn't want anybody really to have any sort of identity. So to meet people that had discovered themselves on a level that I had yet to discover myself, I think was so powerful and impactful. And, I'm an emotional empath, so listening to the stories and just hearing everybody, every little noise, every little just taking everything. And, I was exhausted, just exhausted mentally, emotionally every day, because there's so much. And, but I just remember for me, it was just, again, forming those lifelong lasting relationships with tremendous people. So.
Wow, that sounds really, really great. But the next question actually jumps off of kind of what you guys were talking about a lot. Sorry to use guys if that's not appropriate for anybody. Let me know in the chat. The next question is, what skills, lessons, or experiences do you feel Camp Pride provided that changed your thinking or helped you overcome a challenge? So I think that's really related to what you guys were just saying, but let's talk about that. Samael?
Yeah, for me, I guess like one experience that really stands out, or like one interaction I had, was with one of my den leaders, Asher, and he just kind of like was like an idol to me in a sense, because he was like a trans femme person and also a therapist, which is exactly what I want to get into for going to school. And seeing that made me feel a lot more confident in who I was, and like made me have less doubt in myself that I could be a professional and also be who I am at my core and not have to hide that. And so that was really inspiring for me to see, just like other people living their lives as who they are 100% truly, was really awesome.
Nice. Okay, Leanne?
I think it helped me a lot with like my own social anxiety, because like when I first got there, I was just like, please don't notice me. Of like, just like, I'm here and I'm just like happy to be here, but I'm not going to interact with anyone. But by the time like everything ended, I really like surprised some people with just how like energetic and just how like I guess quirky I am. And it was a real stark difference of just being able to like let down a lot of like that anxiety and be able to interact with people and connect with people on an intimate level.
That's sweet. Nat?
Well, I didn't even think about what Samael said, but like, you're totally right. I don't even think I like realized it, until you said it, but totally like the old adult, even though we're all adults here, I don't feel like an adult all the time, but like the older people at Camp Pride that really were like living authentically and like still succeeding, with their passions and things like that. Like, wow, that was empowering. But I think for me, in terms of like skills, this isn't like such a deep answer. It's probably really silly, but like the skill of planning is something that Camp Pride gave me. I was never ever an organized, thoughtful person before. And I had all these things that I wanted to do, but I was like, how do I get from point A to point B? And I kid you not, like the workbooks that we have where we did the action planning, like I still have them in my drawers and I still use them to this day, because that kind of methodical thought process and thinking about every aspect from timelines to the people involved to, what is the scope of your plan, and making sure that it is intersectional and not exclusive in any way. Like all of those things Camp Pride gave me. So I'm always forever grateful just for those workbooks and for the process of working through that. Definitely.
Eric?
Yeah, again, tagging off what Nat said, the structure, even at the time, I didn't really realize just how important the structure was. And even today, structure is still something that, I struggle with at times. But Camp Pride, I think, integrates that naturally and purposefully, because I think it really shows the impact that organized queers can have on the world, and it definitely had an impact on me. I guess some of the experiences I took away is just watching all these people heal and grow in their own unique ways. I think kind of gave me, the ability to kind of reach out in my own way and kind of see, okay, that person, they're doing it like that. And what can I take away from that? There was so much growth going on around me that I felt like it was, I don't want to say easy, but it was very manageable for me to grow, at that time and just learn how others grow as well. So.
Nice. So this is another related question. How do you feel Camp Pride changed or reaffirmed the way you practice advocacy and leadership in your communities? So Samael, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it really kind of like helped me become a little bit less self-centered and more aware of like those around me. It was just really eye-opening with seeing everybody there from different parts of like the states and everything, and meeting everybody with such like unique and different stories to tell. That really helped like open up my world a lot more to like different experiences people can have. And so that kind of, I think, reflected on when I went back to try to do my junior year originally. Like I was a lot more like aware of others around me and how to be a gender sexuality advocate at my college while also making sure that I'm including everybody. So yeah.
Nice. Leanne?
I don't think I have much to add. Samael just put it so well. So
Okay, now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of to riff off of what Samael said, it's kind of like the praxis of intersectionality was like kind of my first experience with Camp Pride. That's like a horrible thing to call it because I know that it misuses the term intersectionality, like, but whatever. In school, like, we learn about Kimberly Crenshaw at my classes and the history of the Black feminist theory that created a foundation for Crenshaw's work and like all of that stuff. But I don't think I actually started to like really like feel those concepts come alive and like really see it happening in front of me until I got to Camp Pride. Just because I wasn't anymore like in a classroom debating this complicated theory with students who maybe didn't necessarily have any like personal stake in those actual concepts. I was discussing it with all of these students from different backgrounds with diverse gender and sexuality like experiences and genuine like advocacy goals that they wanted to see happen. And we were all like discussing the best practices for implementing these, often convoluted theories that we don't really know how to like implement into actual advocacy work. So that basically changed like my entire perspective on academia and advocacy. It just like taught me what it means to put those kind of theories and knowledge into practice in like a pragmatic way, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Eric?
Yeah, no, I think what Nat said did make a lot of sense, as well as what Samael said. It really blew my mind to see what it really, just what to see what other advocates from across the nation were up to that intersected with what I was intersecting with at the time, because I'd gone out and protested before, but to hear some of these people's stories and to hear how they made real institutional change, I felt humbled. It was like, wow, as somebody who, I struggle with structure at times, systemics aren't always my strong suit. So to hear how people navigated the system and really impacted lives was really powerful. And it really made me sit and think, when I go to these protests, why am I really out there? Like, what am I out there because I have steam to blow off, or am I out there really representing this group? And it really made me kind of check my privilege and really think about what I was doing and where I was putting myself in conjunction with certain movements. Am I putting myself in front of them and blocking them, or am I leading from behind and helping fuel the movement? So.
Wow, those are all really beautiful answers. Thank you. The next question is actually about this year's Camp Pride, which is happening digitally. And we wanted to ask, so what do you think are some of the difficulties and differences, or I guess like what do you foresee being difficulties and differences between your Camp Pride experience and a digital Camp Pride experience, which is the one that's happening this year. So, Samael, do you want to start with that?
Yeah. I think for one, like just the whole part of like traveling somewhere and staying in like close quarters with a group of people like really adds to the experience, because that kind of gives you like more, I guess, more time to like talk to people, not like just in a group setting, but like on one-on-one as well. And I think also it'll make it a little bit, I think, harder to connect, just because like I personally, like I have more difficulty connecting with people over technology, and like even if it is video chatting, like there's still like a stronger form of connection in person. And so hopefully that doesn't take away from the experience, but that's definitely something that I could see like coming up.
Yeah. Leanne, do you have
Yeah, I think definitely just like even just like technological, just like little bugs and hiccups of just like you know like it, like not everyone always has access like to the best Wi-Fi or like the best place to be able to like connect over like video chat, and it's just like sometimes just some things are gonna go like wrong and it's unplanned, and it's just like, well, we don't really have much that we can do, but we're just gonna have to like push through it. So
yeah. Nat?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to what Samael said. I mean, I think the one plus of it could be that it might just like make the whole experience more accessible in certain ways. I know that like making a physical conference happen can have a lot of issues with accessibility, so that might be a benefit to doing it online. But earlier you asked what our favorite like things about Camp Pride the experience was, and I said the sorry, did someone say something?
it's just
I think it was a little
Okay, my bad. The something that I said earlier, like the social like experience, like getting to talk to people between sessions and things like that. Like I said, like that stuff is invaluable. I mean, I had some of the hardest conversations with people, in those breakout sessions, like not breakout sessions, but those moments in between where like you would get out of a session and you were dealing with some really intense stuff and somebody still wasn't quite like processing it, and you had to sit down and talk for like 30 minutes through things with them, to either help them understand or help them heal or help them make connections. And it would happen to you too, and like those moments are invaluable. Like when a session ends and you hit leave meeting, like what then? Like you're by yourself, so I think that might just be the biggest downside, to be honest, unfortunately.
Eric?
Lots of great points. I don't have much to add to that. I would just say that, accessibility, I think, really stands out to me. Not everybody can afford to travel wherever,
Exactly.
I know I had to fly. Unfortunately, my university was able to cover that for me. So hopefully that, although there won't be the physical experience, hopefully that because of the accessibility, there will be more people that will get to intersect and get to indulge in not only themselves, but within the people they meet there. So,
Yeah. You guys can also feel free if you have any other thoughts after we've gone around. If you want to speak again, you can do so, if you please. But we can move on to the next question for now because it's still related. So how do you view the internet and social media as a means for circulating information and organizing? And what do you feel are the benefits or detriments of this approach? Samael, do you want to go first?
Sure. That is a big question. I think like one issue, I guess, like, and this is just like general like internet access, is trying to find actual facts versus just somebody posting on a blog or making an edit on a website. Like you want to make sure that the information you're getting is accurate. I think also like it can be a little bit more difficult to like communicate online, because there's no like tone of voice. You can't really do hand gestures as much, and so I think that can block off some communication as well, a little bit.
Sorry, I took a sip of water just as you were finishing it. Leanne, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a double-edged sword because like I was able to like work out like my own sexuality because of like YouTube and like a lesbian YouTube community there. But also at the same time, it's also you can find a lot of really bad stuff and that kind of like really bad ideas, like the certain part of lesbians you don't really like the biphobic and transphobic ones, and it's like, oh boy, it's like it's difficult because there's a lot of just systematic things that is wrong with social media in general. So it's trying to figure out how to weave through all of the bad stuff and get to the good stuff is just like main question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nat?
Yeah, I don't really like totally know how to answer this question, which is, I mean, I really hope my professors like never see this because I definitely had a class on social media activism, like, and they're gonna haze me for not like having the answer to this. But I don't know. I think it's complicated. It's like what was it Leanne said that it's like a double-edged sword. You know, like I think it's almost the same thing as the conference. Like what Eric brought up that like you know there are potential pros to the conference, but there are also these like cons and accessibility that make it really challenging to really bring a lot of the most vulnerable populations together to make sure that all of our advocacy needs meet everybody's needs. You know. So in that way, like utilizing social media for advocacy and technology for advocacy can be really helpful. But then, of course, the problem is that, yeah, it does limit communication and socialization in certain ways. For some people, like it's almost like no option is the perfect one. But the idea that it's like not beneficial or that it doesn't work or that it's just like armchair activism, like to me is a load of BS. Like, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement hit its peak because of the internet. Like, you know, and that's because Alicia, Patrice, and Opal knew how to use the internet so brilliantly that now they have like, you know, 17 chapters across the US and Canada. Like that happened because of social media activism. I almost wonder if it's like difficult. Y'all can chime in, by the way, if you're like, if you want to cut in. But I wonder if it's like difficult just because of the fact that we have like social media is coming almost like coming of age and it changing so much. And it's like this new thing that we have to deal with as a society that we almost don't have like a playbook on how to use it, right? We don't know how to fact check and we don't know like meaningful social media communication and we don't know like resource acquisition and we don't know like how to tell an expert from a fraud. And you know, like those are things that if we don't have education on that, how can we be expected to create genuine change? Or how can we know the difference between like an actual advocacy group and like a hate group disguised as an advocacy group, you know, like spewing misinformation? Yeah, so that's the hard part. Like we don't really know how to use it. Like we use it all the time, but we like don't know how to use it. So how do we use it? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm allowed to like add something. But like it's also like with like certain social media platforms that also censor LGBTQ content, it's also like a big problem. So
yeah, bias is a whole other issue.
Yeah. Eric, do you have any thoughts?
I do. You know, overall, I guess from my personal experience, I probably added close to 100 people on Facebook, Snapchat, PlayStation, from Camp Pride that, you know, I still connect with, I still see. So
totally.
You know, and with social media, I mean, if you're going to be active on the internet, you really have to filter your content. You really do. You know, I used to fight with people all the time on Facebook, but then I was like, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore. And filter these people out. And now when things happen, it's like I don't really fight with people, you know. But I think one thing that unfortunately we do have to mention is that in this country it's such a heavily propaganda, you know, the propaganda is so heavy in this country, and we see it everywhere, and it's everywhere from right in our face to subliminally, and it's you know, like Samuel said, it's very hard to understand what's facts anymore, you know. I mean, if you're not a critical thinker, it's very difficult to understand like what's what anymore, really. So
yeah, definitely. And I think that the piggyback kind of off the first thing that Eric said, the whole like the way that we kind of like spiral into social media can be unhealthy, and then that can be damaging to like our efforts with advocacy, you know, like I think something like happened once on my campus, and the night that it happened, I remember I spent like an hour on Facebook, like scrolling through everybody's like messages and, you know, arguing with people and stuff. And the next day my professor asked like, what did you all do? And I was like, I spent an hour on Facebook. And she was like, and what did that do? And I was like, nothing. It helps nothing. Like it did nothing. It only hurt me. So yeah, that kind of like mental health aspect as well. And knowing when your efforts are necessary, when they're helpful, how do you allocate your time to online advocacy in a way that you know is actually going to do something, and you know comes from genuine information, and isn't going to be a detriment to you and your mental health and your time, and how do you balance that, you know, like avoiding random internet arguments that are pointless and not going to do anything, stuff like that. So
yeah. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this one, or do you guys want to move on? Okay. The next question has two parts, so I'll say the first part and you guys can answer, and then we'll go over the second part after. So how do you practice intersectionality in regards to advocating for marginalized groups on college campuses? Samael, you want to start?
Yeah. So for what I was doing, at least at the beginning of my junior year last year before I left, was as a GSA and also as a person who was a part of the exec on one of our queer clubs called Moxie on campus. We were reaching out during certain times of the year to different groups, specifically like the Native American clubs that they had on campus and the POC clubs they have on campus, and reaching out to them and asking them to collab with us and having them take the forefront of everything and have them like tell us what they want to do, and then have us in the background supporting whatever it is, doing whatever we can to help them make what they want to happen. And so that was kind of like what I think really changed from my sophomore to my junior year, was instead of just the LGBT groups running things and doing things, we were reaching out to other clubs and organizations on campus to have them lead the events that they want to do and have us just help in the background.
Leanne?
I don't feel like I have a lot to add.
Okay. Nat?
Can you, I like heard Samuel's answer, but can you repeat the question just to make sure that I'm on the same page here?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you practice intersectionality in regards to advocating for marginalized groups on college campuses?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the big thing for me, besides like what Eric mentioned earlier about just like being a critical thinker and having that sort of mentality, I think for me, it was about being thoughtful and meticulous enough to take the time to figure out how anything you do, any program you're planning, any project, to consider how right from the beginning it would be experienced by any potential attendee. So I guess the summary of that is like, be proactive. Like, you shouldn't be doing things reactively. And I mean, if it does happen, that's fine, but like, learn from it and then be proactive, because there likely are queer, like disabled students, for example, at your school, and maybe they can't participate in the activities that you have because you have not proactively made space for them and things like that. So it's like a process of looking into how do other schools implement certain things, and how do they do this type of programming, and what do a lot of like disability advocates or Black advocates or Indigenous advocates like talk about in terms of campus life and university life, and how those things need to change, and how can you implement that into your programming and activist work. So it does take more work, but if you're not willing to do it and try to do it ahead of time, then I guess what are you doing? Like, that's what you're there for. You're there to make a space accessible for all queer people. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it, I guess.
Yeah. Eric?
For me, being on a college campus, so many people are, they're stressed out, they're tired. I know I was. And you're right, Nat, it does take work. It doesn't just happen. And I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, the world could be like this, or the world could be like this. But, because they're so focused on doing what they're doing, they aren't always advocating, or if they are, they're not doing it in an effective way because they haven't taken the time to sit down and plan it out. And I had that struggle. I got involved during my time on campus. I got involved as the leader of an organization there, and I was surprised how many people reached out to me and how many people wanted, they had this idea for this idea for this idea, and just, it's if you don't have it within yourself, you won't be able to have it for anyone else, and you always have to remember to take care of yourself. And that's when I learned that
definitely,
there would be times when I wouldn't, I wasn't taking care of myself, so I wouldn't show up to meetings and things like that. But I had such a great team that I was fortunate enough that we were able to get things done anyway. One of the things that I learned from Camp Pride is everybody has different resources. Every university is so different. I guess I realized just how privileged and lucky I was at my university. We have such a great space, in my opinion, and change is like, we were switching conferences at the time, and there was just so much change happening, and I felt like there was quite the impact being had. So
yeah, I totally relate to that too, because I was definitely also struggling at certain points in university, and balancing that with like being on the exec board of a group was really hard. But yeah, I guess it's a matter of like, you have to know like what resources are available to you, what is your team's capacity, what are you able to actually do. But then like that versus like just pure thoughtlessness, like just like if you're already like, if you have like a big event going on, you're already putting in this work, like just like forgetting about entire groups of people, like that is kind of was like always my concern. Like so maybe like allocating some space within the planning for that. And I think the good thing about being proactive is that if you dedicate a little bit of time now, you can almost create like a template for the future of the organization. Like if you research in advance, as an example, like something that I saw happen, like how do you bring an ASL interpreter to an event? Well, now you have a document explaining how to do that and what the process is and what the deadlines are. And now in the future, like the organization has that available, and you don't have to wonder how to do that anymore, And I think that goes into like the planning and the organizing. So obviously you have to forgive yourself for not being able to do everything at once, 100%. But if you can do those little things, I think it can help the organization as a whole, especially over time. Like, so in the future, you have a plan for making sure that you are implementing intersectionality as much as possible, if that makes sense. It's like a balance.
Nice. So the next question is kind of a follow-up to the one I just asked y'all. And it's pretty related, and I think we've touched on it a bit, but I'll ask it anyway. And so if anybody has anything else to say on the topic, they can chime in. So what changes do you believe are needed to make LGBTQ plus organizations more intersectional in their approach? So Samael, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of going back to what I said earlier, reaching out to other clubs and organizations and having collaborations with them and making sure that they're just as much a part of what you're doing as you are, so that they can really have their voices heard, I think is like a really good step in that direction. Just doing collaborations, having small events, big events, whatever you can manage with that.
Yeah. Leah?
Oh boy, this is a big question.
I know. No, it is.
I think especially like getting out of your comfort zone and like, you know, like even though it's like been done this way in a particular way for a while, like making sure that, you know, you do go, you know, try and go to places that you haven't been there before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nat?
I feel like I kind of went off on the last question in a similar way, so I think I'm good.
Okay. Eric, do you have anything else to say on this?
Not really. I think Samuel really said it best. You know, collaborating with the people that would be most impacted, and you know, listening and understanding their needs, and also providing the space for it. You know, in our society, space is such a personal. I mean, rightfully so. It's a very personal thing. So if you make space within your vicinity for them, you know, to have an impact not only now but in the future, I think that can be impactful.
Thanks. So the next question is, what do you feel the role of college students is in the fight for LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion? Samael?
Yeah, I think college students play a pretty big role in that, just because like we are the in-between of like, you know, growing up, learning those having those experiences, and like being in like a role model who is living their life fully and doing their career. I think it's important to like set examples like, hey, like now is the time to make a difference, and like this is how you can do it. I think that's kind of like the role.
Leanne?
Can you repeat the question again to make sure I understand everything?
Of course. Okay, so it was, what do you feel the role of college students is in the fight for LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion?
Okay. Yeah. I think, you know, like since like with college students, you're coming into yourself for like the very first time of like you're on your own, you're very independent. And I think sort of their place is like being able to like just I had to censor myself a bit because I was like, probably can't say that word. But to like call out some of like a lot of sort of like traditions that have been like set already in stone, and be able to be like, okay, but let's try something different. But yeah. Almost cursed, just like right. Okay, that was.
You're good. Nat?
Sorry, I just saw Deja's comment that we can say whatever the fuck we want, apparently.
Okay, so their job is bullshit.
If you want to say your comment again, Leanne, you can.
Yeah, just call all the bullshit.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I guess I just echo that. College campuses, to me, I've almost seen as like these little mini societies where like a lot of experimentation on how people can coexist like constantly occurs, which is great because it's full, I mean, mostly of young people, but also of older people as well, who are surrounded by younger people and have to like deal with all of these young people and their wild ideas and things like that. And I think it's great. I think it's a great environment. You know, college students have utilized that space to prove that more radical ideas of how to live and interact are feasible. They've started national movements, advanced movements, expanded the reach of advocacy projects, you know, been at the forefront of so much knowledge creation, and set precedents for K through 12 education. So yeah, I think they're freaking important.
Eric?
Definitely, they definitely are. You know, college students, you know, I didn't fully realize it at the time, and I feel like most don't, but I mean, like, they're the future. And if you're if you're an active participant at any university, you know, clearly you're somebody who has chosen to live a lifestyle of thinking critically, and I mean, you're a member of an institution that has a vast effect on not only the ecosystem around it, but on the world. I mean, the United States is such an influential nation on the rest of the world. People see what we're doing over here, and you know, so many of us, you know, they want to copy us from everything we do, and that, you know, colleges are no exception. And you can have an impact. Anybody, any college student, if you're active on campus, you can have an impact. College students are so impressionable, you know, and if you're going around just saying, you know, a positive message, you know, that's going to spread and people are going to feel that. And it's, college students are the future and they're so enabled. And I know a lot of universities don't always enable queer activity and queer identity, but, you know, there's other ways, you know, to go about it through your university that can be achieved. And you know, Nat just said it so perfectly with you know, these, it's like little societies, and everyone is different how they coexist. It challenges the norm, because when I lived on campus, it was so different. I didn't really lock my door. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. It was so much different from where I lived, you know, in the city. So
Yeah.
Sorry, I would like to add. I also want to make sure that we don't detract from the idea that like you don't have to be a college student to make an impact, you know? Like, I don't want to put that on a pedestal. I think it's just like important to kind of debase the idea that college students have no impact or like think they're more important than they are, you know, because they definitely do have an impact. So
So the next question is switching gears a little bit. Obviously, Camp Pride is inclusive of, you know, faculty from colleges as well as students. And so I wanted to ask, what do you believe faculty and staff can do to advocate and uplift LGBTQ plus students fighting for their rights on their campuses? So Samuel?
Yeah, so I actually like was able to see this on my campus, which was really awesome, with one of my professors who I loved so much. She got really active with the LGBT community by simply just like anytime I'd ask her if she wanted to be on a panel or if she would come to an event, like she always was more than happy to like attend or be a part of something we were planning. And so like for faculty and staff to just kind of like be more involved with clubs and organizations and like showing up to the events that we throw, like just showing that, hey, I'm here, I support you guys, like makes such a big difference, because then you can be like, oh, I know that professor, I'd love to take a class with them because I know they're supportive of the things that I'm a part of. And so I think that's just like one really big thing that faculty staff can do, is just show up and just be there.
Right. Leanne?
Yeah. At Davidson, like one of the college pastors like reached out to me because he found out that like I was involved with our like GSA, and he was like, you know, I really want to make sure that like it is like that it's known that like you guys can like come to me like anytime, like if you need any kind of advocacy or anything like that. And it meant a lot because of just like, especially growing up in a very small like conservative town where literally we had like 4 churches on a same street corner, and all of them were pretty anti-LGBT in any regard. It meant a lot, and I still gotta get kind of emotional thinking about it.
Yeah. Nat?
Leanne, that story was like hitting me right here. Like, I think, oh God, this is like one of my soapboxes, but I like read this tweet the other day that said like higher education's favorite ways to stall/diffuse student activist efforts are listening sessions, special task forces, hiring chief diversity officers, and climate surveys. And it just like rang so true. Like the most, impactful faculty and staff are the ones that are not like patronizing towards the students that are trying to do the work. And I'm just speaking from like my experience, it's not that those things aren't necessarily helpful, but at my university, there were several people already, designated to those aspects of diversity and inclusion, and yet they were doing stuff like this, even though organized students, had their demands like stated explicitly and the things that they needed and had student support. Our true allies and faculty and staff would like sit down with us and they would ask like, what do y'all need? What are you trying to do? And they would have knowledge about the university and the bureaucracy to help us like prioritize and develop step-by-step plans and meet with us to guide us, there wasn't belittling or patronizing or like, oh, you don't know enough about this issue, so we need to hire a chief diversity officer when like you're the one who knows what you need, so that's just like my whole mentality towards faculty and staff is like, level with the students, incorporate them into every aspect of change, knowing that they're the ones that ask for it and are advocating for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Eric?
It's no secret the impact faculty has on the staff or on the students and on one another. And I think the journey for identity, it's really the same for all of us. We have our own expression of it, but I think, if you really want to understand somebody or a group of people, you have to have a certain understanding of yourself. And if you don't have that, when you reach out to somebody, you're not going to be able to understand or comprehend what they're about. So I think, if you really want to impact somebody else, you got to have a true understanding of where you're at and, the impact that your efforts are going to have. How many of us want to just jump out there and, help, but where does that really get us? If it's not coordinated, if it's not structured, and working with the students to come up with that structure and that coordination, I think, is where we see real change. And so that's what I would say to faculty.
Nice. So we have one more question. Just one more. It's very sad. So the last question is, what advice would you give a young person looking to start their own journey with LGBTQ plus leadership? Samael?
Yeah, I guess some advice that I would give is to just remember that everything you've experienced in life is different than those around you. Even if you see someone who looks similar to you, you may think, oh, this person probably had the same like life experience as I did, but they might not have. And so just like keeping your mind open to that and listening and really listening to what other people have to say and learning about who they are and what their experiences have been, because that'll really help you become a stronger leader, building off those experiences and meeting those people.
Leanne?
Yeah. Don't forget to take care of yourself. It's like a lot of activists like go through like the like sort of like this, I guess, character arc of just like, where you just push and push. It's just like you have to like be there like everywhere and just like learning how to moderate yourself and be like and check in with yourself and know your own mental health and everything like that. It's so important because you're not going to be useful to anyone if you just end up burying yourself 6 feet under. Because yeah, you can be able to like step back and be like, okay, this is going to be okay if I take like a break for a day. Like, yeah, so
Yeah. Nat?
Yeah, I feel like this is just like a summary kind of almost of what everything that we've discussed in the whole panel, you know. I would say like find people who share your concerns and want to see change happen because it's hard to make change happen alone. Create a list of priorities and make a plan. Find supportive faculty and staff if you can. And then the last thing is just echoing what y'all just said, like, you know your limitations of yourself and your group. You know, find balance. Everyone has different limits of what they're able to do, or their resources are different, or you know, whatever. Like you can't do it all at once, and you can't do it all in general. So, you know, don't let yourself burn out because if you really want to see change happen, it needs to be sufficient change. You need to be self-sufficient. That's taking care of yourself and making sure that you don't burn out so quickly that nothing comes from it, you know? So yeah, that's my advice.
Absolutely. I think just to kind of piggyback off what Nat said, and also what Leon said, just you know, how many people want to lead groups of people? They want to be in charge, but they can't even lead themselves. And they can't take care of themselves. You know, I think there's a lot of people in the world that say, "Oh, I wish my government did this or did this or did this," but they can't even function for themselves. So how can we expect these groups around us to be so benevolent beyond our understanding? You know, anyone who's going to be a leader, get ready to take the hits. You know, if your group's going to take hits, guess who's going to take them first? You know, and it's, you know, the old saying, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And you know, that's where real progress is. When people start, you know, opposing you and trying to rise up against a group that maybe you've put together, that's when real change is happening, because people don't want to see that change. So you know, it's not all bad when you see these opposition groups, because if you didn't, you know, maybe that'd be a sign that nothing's changing. And so being a leader just comes down to understanding who you are and helping other people understand who they are. So.
Well, that was really beautiful. And thank you guys so much for coming. Y'all were so well thought. And this was really awesome. It was so cool to hear more about each of you and your experiences with Camp Pride. It would be really lovely if everybody who's watching right now could help me thank all of these lovely people by sending some hearts and likes in the messages as we say goodbye to everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. That was really great. Campus Pride really appreciates each and every one of our panelists. So thank you all for participating in this panel and for your ongoing support of Campus Pride. Thank you to everyone who is watching and enjoying Camp Pride. This is the first and oldest camp for LGBTQ college students in the country, and Camp Pride has been building future leaders for 14 years. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy the next panel.
Hello, my name is Vati Pham, and I use the she, her, hers pronoun, and I am one of the interns at Campus Pride this summer 2020. Thank you so much for watching this panel on the impact of Camp Pride, changing lives since 2007. Our goal is to learn more about Campus Pride and the Camp Pride program from former alumni. We're very glad to have with us a panel of former Camp Pride alums from the beginning of Camp Pride 14 years ago and the last 5 years. As we bring them into the live studio, I want to thank them all for being with us and sharing their experience with Campus Pride and reflecting on their student leadership and how it has affected their life today. Welcome, everyone. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm very excited to talk more to you and get to know more. So first of all, I would love to say thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like each of you to introduce yourself briefly. So it would be your name, your pronouns, and where you went to college and what you currently do. Let's start with Alan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alen. I am a 2013 alumna of Campus Pride. I attended Rollins College, and I'm currently a consultant here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Thank you. So now let's continue with Aiden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aiden. I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey. I am an alumni of 2013 Camp Pride. I'm really excited to be here. Right now, I work in marketing at American Express. Yeah.
Thanks, Aiden. Laura, would you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Laura. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a camp alum from 2008, the very second camp that was ever held. I run a small business. I am a Reiki practitioner and tarot reader. And I recently just left my job at Starbucks because I am getting ready to move to Queens, New York. So I'm very excited to be here.
That is very exciting. Thank you. Hi, Mark. Can you introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Travis Rivera. My pronouns are he, his, and him. I am currently living in Oakland, California, but I went to school at William Paterson University of New Jersey, where I grew up. And I attended Camp Pride in 2011. So that's my year, and I'm really excited to be here. And by day, I'm an arts administrator. By night, I'm a choreographer, writer, and podcaster.
Thank you, Mark. And last but not least, Rebby.
Hey y'all, I'm Rebby. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I attended camp for the first time in 2012, and I'm currently the Director of Education Policy at a statewide organization called Equality North Carolina, and I'm based here in Campus Pride's home, Charlotte.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to get to learn more about you. So we can better understand who you are if you're willing. Can you tell us about your coming out journey?
I'll start. Thanks, first of all, for having me. Really appreciate it. It's really an honor to be here among these incredible alumnus. Campus Pride serves a very pivotal role in my self-development and in my life, so I could not be anywhere better tonight than to be with you all. In terms of like this idea, I don't think I ever had a come out. I think it was almost a natural transition metamorphosis because of this idea of coming out as if you're hiding for so long. At least that was not the case for me because, self-identity, sometimes as much as you'd like to admit to yourself that you blend in, you can assimilate. Well, that's always something that makes you stand out. Whether it's your mannerism, your smile, there's something unique about you that is so different that always exudes this authenticity, this uniqueness. So for me, it was definitely a journey of self-recognition and self-declaration. Thanks.
I definitely love that. It to me, I think my coming out just was more of people finding out, or myself and telling them about myself. Um, and I came out twice. I came out once as a lesbian in high school, and that didn't quite go as planned because, as I was saying about finding out, it was my mother finding out from someone else that I was dating women. And then, after years after that, in college, I came out as a trans man. And that, to me, I guess, is one of the most pivotal coming outs because it was me telling her of, hey, this is who I am. If you want to be in my life, that's great. If not, we'll separate ways. Thankfully, it went fairly well. I guess the second time was a charm. But yeah, I think after many years, it's been about 9 years since this whole journey from coming out in high school all the way to coming out to who I am now. And I think finally, after 9 years, like I'm in a place that most of the people that I know about my journey, about what I've been through. But I also have the privilege of some people not knowing. But either way, I think I'm really happy with where I am now, and everything that's happened for the past 9 years, I think really has made me into who I am coming out or coming to myself.
Thanks, Aiden.
I'll go next. I came out back in high school. It was like my junior year of high school, and I originally came out as bisexual, and my identity has changed so much since then. I've identified as bisexual, I've identified as lesbian, as pansexual, as queer. Now I'm at the point where I just tell people my sexual orientation is a lifelong series of plot twists. And I think that's the beautiful thing about sexuality, is that it's forever changing. And you just kind of have to go with the flow of it all. As confusing and distressing as it may be sometimes, there's also so much beauty in it. So yeah, go with the flow.
That's wonderful to hear, Laura. I personally believe that too. Everyone has the right to make their own decision about their sexual identity, sexual orientation, and I think that it is definitely a lifelong journey. Thank you so much for your remark.
Hi everyone, I'll go next. So I came out the closet, or Darnell more like to say, invite in. So who are you inviting into your life? So I invited people into my life and my journey at 14 years old, coming out in a Latinx household. My mom took it really hard. And then in college, I discovered that I was gender nonconforming, and so I identify as femme. So I realized that. And then also in college, I realized that I could date trans and cisgendered men. So I talk openly about dating trans men and cisgendered men as a queer person of color who's also disabled. And yeah, so I invited people in when I was 14 and then again in college. And now it's not even necessary for me to come out. It's about walking my truth.
Thank you, Mark.
When I came out for the first time when I was 13, and I wrote it down in my journal, and I still have that journal, and I go back and put myself back in those years and my own understanding, and really understanding how, what access that I had to language then, and how that has changed now for folks, that it was rare. That it felt rare to come out so young and to have a really clear understanding. I came out with my gender identity as being a non-binary person, probably 2016, 2017. And I really relate to Laura that it's been a journey, that the more that I learn and understand, the less boxes I feel like I have to check. And And so that has been a really beautiful journey for me, and to continue to stay really connected into the queer community has really meant a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So how did you learn about Campus Pride as a college student? Were you a student leader on campus?
So the opportunity for Campus Pride actually came through this leadership program that Rollins had, where in order, there was multiple pathways that students had to apply and ultimately get selected for various leadership opportunity. And then I ended up applying for the Campus Pride one, and I got accepted, and which came up with a responsibility and duty that upon the tools and resources that I would have gained at Campus Pride, I was then responsible to bring that back to Rollins. And part of this was like, so we're gonna send you to this camp, and then upon your return, you're gonna serve on the Provost Advisory Council. And so part of it was me getting as much information as possible and kind of becoming a transfer of knowledge. So that was how this initiation process went for me in terms of me be able to attend camp, but also the focus was gaining as much resources as possible to take back to do the campus education piece with different various departments.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I can go next. I was very involved with the Center for Social Justice at Rutgers. So for about 3 out of the 4 years that I was at Rutgers, I worked there. I volunteered my time. I did multiple events. And with that, I got the opportunity to go to Campus Pride. The director at the time came up to me and another person who was at the center and asked us if we wanted to be part of this. And much like Elaine was saying, take all this knowledge that we learned at Campus Pride and then bring it back to Rutgers to try and just communicate it to everyone else that was there. So we jumped at the opportunity to do so, and I'm so glad that we did, honestly.
That's amazing.
I'll go next. I got to go to Camp Pride because I was elected one of the co-presidents of the LGBT student organization at the University of Dayton. And the advisor of the group approached me, and she was like, here's this opportunity. It looks like it would really benefit our campus. Are you interested in going? And I said, heck yes, why wouldn't I be? And the University of Dayton is a very, very Catholic university. In terms of Catholic schools, it's on the more liberal side. However, it wasn't very LGBT friendly. So I was excited to go to camp and bring back all of these resources to my campus and create a more diversity friendly environment for students.
Thank you, Laura. Mark, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Forgot I was muted. So I got involved with Camp Pride in 2011 because Robbie Powers, one of the advisors for the LGBTQ club at William Patterson, told me about it, and we were able to get funding through the Student Government Association to help us go on this trip. It was my first time going to the South, so I was really excited but nervous. And I remember going to Nashville and just being like blown away by the heat, but also the music and the culture, and just being really like loving the environment that we were at, and loving the fact that I was going to spend the next few days with a lot of queer, trans people. So that's how I got involved with Campus Pride. And much like others, I had to go back to campus. I was in the organization for the LGBT club, and I had to go back to campus and spread the knowledge and do work around what we learned at Camp Pride.
Wonderful.
I attended La Sierra University, which is a small Seventh-day Adventist institution in Riverside, California. And there was an advisor there who was helping us navigate having a lot of barriers to accessing a gay straight alliance or genders and sexualities alliance. And at that time, we were not allowed to have it. And so as a leader and being really vocal, he helped make sure that I was able to get some tools that could really help me address those issues. And so with what I learned at camp, I was able to come back and do a direct action that included other universities and colleges in the area to bring attention on the religious discrimination and exclusions that we were facing at the school. And I'm happy to say that there is now an official GSA at the school now. And so, yeah, our work was really important, and to be able to create that legacy was something that Camp Pride offered to me.
That is great to hear. So what year did you attend Camp Pride? And please share with us a fond memory of Camp Pride or of Campus Pride.
You know, that's a very tough question because I would say for me, as a 2013, as much as, I was responsible to gain resources and bring it back, I felt like in the moment, I just had too many memories that sometimes I feel like they're kind of blurred over each other because I wanted to enjoy it as me, but at the same time, I know that I had another hat and another responsibility. But I would say one of my most fun memories at Campus Pride was the ability to be around individuals who were part and are part of my community. There was this sort of like chimney room at Vanderbilt that at night would all sit around in circles in our orange t-shirt. I think that was one of the most fun memories, and we'll be writing our messages to put in our mailboxes or brown paper bag that we decorated. That was like the most fun thing because to be able to pass on and write messages to new folks that I met throughout the day, but all of us being together in that room was just so magnetic. It was so enriching, so fulfilling, kind of tells you all of the things that the world out to be. So for me, that was definitely the most fun memory. And because being around with everyone was never a dull moment.
That is very vivid. Thank you so much.
I can go next. I was also part of the 2013 year, and wow, this time fly. It definitely feels. I always remember Camp Pride so fondly because there's so many like amazing people that I met, and there were just so many like great experiences. But at the same time, like it also is very hard to just pinpoint one specific thing because it was like 7 years ago. But I think some of my favorite memories I have is really having these tough conversations in groups and talking about gender, talking about like different schools and learning about how like I went to Rutgers. Everything was pretty liberal at Rutgers. Like we had our own justice, we had an LGBT center. And to talk to people whose schools didn't have that was really eye-opening to me because, I was going into my sophomore year of college and I'm like, the world is great. Like everyone has what I have. And getting into these conversations and being like, hey, you know what? No, not every school has a Center for Social Justice. Not everyone has the same opportunities to talk to people who identify like them, who are like them. So I think that was some of my favorite things were having conversations that broadened my mind.
That's great. Thank you, Aiden.
So I'll go next. I attended camp as a camper in 2008, and then through 2012, I was a small group leader, a pride leader. And I have so many fond memories of camp. I don't know where to begin. One of my favorite memories, I think, was my first year as a pride leader. One of the faculty members had just scheduled a couple hours for us to just do nothing as a team. There was another Pride leader who was leading a panel. I forget what the panel was about, but he was facilitating the panel, and all of the campers were focused on that. And we just spent basically 2 hours laughing. At one point, we had all decided that we were going to text the Pride leader that was facilitating the panel, like every single one of us, so that his phone would keep vibrating for like a solid 5 minutes. And at one point, he took a break from the panel and came around, and he was standing on the patio outside of a window of the meeting room that we were in. And he expressed his unhappiness with the number of text messages he had sent or he had received. And Camp Pride, it has been a huge part of my life for the time I was involved with it. And I'll never forget all of the memories I made throughout my time with Camp Pride.
Yeah, I have a very specific memory that I remember from 2011, and I want to share it, but I feel like I don't want to ruin it for future Camp Pride people who attend. But there's a moment at the end, towards the end of camp, that we got into a big circle, and we had to close our eyes, and statements were read out loud. And if a person felt as if you moved them or touched them or helped them in their life throughout that week, they would touch you. And I just remember being so overwhelmed with emotion. I have never felt, and I still haven't felt this since then, the sense of community, the sense of belonging, and the courage to stand alone if we can't find belonging in our specific regions. That was really important for me, and that was a very pivotal moment in my life. And then another memory that I have to share, equally important, is when I won the Voice in Action Award in 2013. That was a huge honor to have won it, and I feel so grateful for Campus Pride and its Camp Pride program.
When I went to camp the first time as a camper in 2012, and I remember Romeo Jackson was there with me, and they were one of my favorite humans of all time. And what's really great about Romeo is that we've been able to reconnect during conference season every year. And I tell you what, if we don't dance to Beyonce inside the hotel room the same way that we dance to Beyonce in the dorms at Vanderbilt, those moments just completely light me up. Like what happens when all of the sessions are over into 2, 3, 4 a.m. And the most powerful part is that so many of us continue to do this work for our communities beyond college. And I think that is a true testament to what we gained and the access that Camp Pride really opens up in the organization at large. I will also be remiss if I don't mention that as a staff person with Campus Pride for many years, packing the van for camp and the whole process of getting ready and lining up the speakers and the workbook and meeting the new people each year. It really made me feel like I was a part of the legacy for such a long time. And so it was really beautiful to be able to participate and learn what makes camp happen every year from the eye of a staff member.
Wow, that all sounds amazing. I'm like really, really excited. I like to look forward to Camp Pride. Thank you so much. Next, what was the experience like attending Camp Pride? What do you recall?
I think from the moment that I left my house from Florida, Miami in particular, and I remember that I was being driven to the airport by my mom. And I don't remember anything per se what my expectations was going to be. I remember having a very early flight, and all of a sudden I'm asking myself, it's like, who booked this flight? Why is it this early? We're only going up in Nashville. It can't be this long. So I remember getting there, and first time ever in Nashville, and I get through the airport, and I had to go wait, and then coming to find out that I didn't realize that a limo was picking me up to take me to camp. So here I am waiting and thinking a regular car, and next thing you know, this limousine comes out. And so they had booked for a limousine for me to attend. So which made the beginning of the journey even greater. But I think the most significant note that was left on my bed was from Judy Shepard and that teddy bear. And I think that this is when it set in about what the journey was going to be like. After reading her note, I think that I was set in reality and expectation. And I think that set the catalyst of change, which sometimes you don't know what kind of seeds are planted, but I think that this was the scene where my political consciousness opened up, because really I think it ignited in me what my trajectory is going to be in terms of equity. And so I would say that those foundations were planted at Campus Pride after reading that note and getting that teddy bear, which I still have somewhere in Florida at my mother's house.
I can go next. I have to say, I'm going to contact Rutgers and ask them why I didn't have a limo pick me up, because I feel a little sad. But no, I think the experience of attending Camp Pride was it's a little crazy to think about, because I think about who I was back then. Like, I hadn't come out as trans yet, and I came into this other college, and I got to have conversation with these amazing people who I had never met before, who had such different experiences from mine, and to be able to really like integrate yourself into that kind of into those conversations and to take so much from it. I think it's the most amazing part of Camp Pride, because we're there with the idea of, hey, we were sent to this camp, and now we get to take all this information that we're learning from what different schools are doing, from just like what the speakers are talking about, and then we have to take it back to campus. So while we're learning all these different things and talking to these different people, we're also thinking, hey, like, what changes am I going to try to make at the school that I'm in right now, and what changes do I want to make overall? So I think that it really helps you grow, and it helps you see outside of just the small world that is your college or your university, into what else is going on in the world. So it was really, really amazing.
So my experience at camp was definitely life-changing. I had grown up very Catholic and had been in Catholic school my entire life. So Camp Pride was the first time I had been in an environment where I was surrounded mostly by queer people. And I had never felt that safe and that comfortable, because you create this environment where, like, we're aware we might step on each other's toes because not everyone has the same experiences or the same knowledge. So they had really created this space where we all felt safe to confront each other if someone said something that had hurt or was problematic. And I left determined to bring that same sense of community, that same sense of safety and comfort back to my own campus.
Yeah, excuse me. I have so many fond moments of Camp Pride, but I think one of the things that was most impactful is my relationship with Robin Oakes. We became really good friends after Camp Pride, and before her, I had this misconception about what bisexuality was, and I was just like, I can't date a bisexual, and that was my own bias and my own internalized issues. And she helped me unpack that and learn that I could date a bisexual person and not feel threatened or intimidated by the fact that they are attracted to multiple genders. It also made me realize that I could date trans men. And we don't talk enough about that as a queer community about cisgender men who date trans men. I feel like oftentimes trans men are forced to be erased from our dialogues. And so I wrote a piece for Huffington Post called Unloving Men Beyond the Erection. And I just remember writing that, and I wouldn't have been able to write about that had I not gone to Camp Pride, had I not had the experience of unpacking my own misunderstandings of queerness and gender and bring this to the forefront of my life. So I met some friends who are still friends with today, like Mac and Ryan Mishler and Ryan Page. I'm still friendly with a lot of the people I went to Camp Pride with.
I very vividly remember, so Trayvon Martin was murdered just months before camp my year. And it was the first time that I heard people in the queer community unpacking race in a very real way. And I can't remember if the topic or panel or workshop at the time was centered on race. I have a strong feeling it might have been. And Jamie Washington played a huge role as a leader in unpacking bias within the queer movement and holding an anti-racism lens within this work. And not a lot of people in organizing in the space where I was at was talking about anti-racism in the movement. I was still having to compartmentalize race from my queer identities. And so in the moment like this right now, when we talk about George Floyd and wrapping up Pride season while mourning as a world, I think that but to know that in that moment, as I was truly developing leadership skills, that taught me what my foundation is truly going to be. And it's my responsibility, it's my right to ensure that that we do move unified in the movements and that we cannot work through a single issue lens, like just looking at sexual orientation or just at gender identity. We have to continue talking about racism and white supremacy in all of these settings. And so I was grateful to see that be integrated.
That is very thoughtful and informative from you all. I really appreciate it. And something I want to share about learning from other schools too, because I am also working with my school to improve LGBTQ inclusion. And like knowing that my school is still lacking so much things compared to like other school, it just like pains me, but also like motivate me to want to improve my campus even more. So that's really inspiring. What would you say are the most valuable lessons you learned at Camp Pride that you have used or still use today in what you do?
I wanted to echo what your statement you just said, and I wanted to give you some words of encouragement because I, for a long time, also thought I was in a particular experience in terms of my own institution. And then I took a step back. So literally taking myself out of it and looking from the outside. And one of the things that I've realized this, as a society, within the last 30 years, we have made tremendous changes and monumental impact when it comes to LGBTQI initiative on college campuses. Because if don't forget, like it was the catalyst was after Matthew Shepard, and I always bring up Matthew Shepard because I think for me I think there is sometime an horror out of pain and agony ignites sort of like unbashing, unapologetic activism. And I think that there's been many crossroads, because considering back, when I was in Campus Pride in 2013, we didn't even had the dream of having marriage equality, let alone now to be talking about in a space where, we are reminded that Title VII also protect, us queer folks in employment. So much has changed, and I think that this is always remind ourselves to keep pushing, even when it doesn't happen in front of us. The needles that we're moving for the next generation that's going to come in is monumental. And so it's almost like, just because you've laid a foundation, it doesn't mean you get to go to that promised land. That's for the next generation. And I think that's part of this work, is kind of continuing with that same effect of going back to Marsha P. Johnson and, Laura Silvera, continuing their legacy. It's continue to those bricks wherever these institutions kind of think like we're just going to be ignored, and keep pushing. And so when I think of the impact it has had in my life, I mean, God, I feel like I'm a definition. I'm a walking billboard, because, part of it is being part of this elite group. I don't think a lot of people realize is going to Campus Pride is an elite small club. Not many people will get this opportunity and this privilege to be part of that club. And once you've matriculated through that club, you become a different human being. And I've met so many people who are queer who've never heard of it, first of all. And I think a lot of time take a step back in terms of realize the knowledge, the connection, and the resources, and what the impact could be. I'd said for me, in terms of Campus Pride, when I think of my life, I don't think I would have had this conscientiousness. I'm probably butchering up this word again. Conscientiousness, whatever it is. I'm stopping. So, but I think that it has had a tremendous impact on me in every single fiber of my being.
Thank you so much. That is very inspiring. Yes, so I was talking about my institution, and even though that, we do not have scenes that show the environment to be not good for LGBTQ individuals, but still the general atmosphere that's not welcoming to LGBTQ people, it's it's enough for us to be really upset about how the institution should change. And thank you so much for your advice. I will definitely take it with heart.
I can go next. So the most valuable lesson I learned at Camp Pride, honestly, and that I still use today, I think, is being okay with myself. It's really feeling connected to a community that, like we were speaking before, has moved mountains in the last 30 years. There's still a lot of things to do, but we'll continue doing it. We'll continue working on bettering just, these institutions. However, being at Camp Pride really showed me that I can live my true self, and be proud of it, be okay with it, go into a room and own it, regardless of what my gender identity is, what my sexual orientation is. And I think that's something that I still use today. And it's also really helped me just feel really comfortable going into LGBT spaces and wanting to be part of different LGBT centers and clubs. That even at American Express, there is an LGBT club, and I try to be active. I try to interact with people there, because it's still places where I feel the most comfortable in, and I think it all truly started at Campus Pride. And even going into those clubs and being like, hey, we could be a little bit more conscientious about this, or know a little bit more about this, and use the resources we have to change the things that we see. So I think that's something that I really got out of Camp Pride.
I'll go next. One thing I learned from Camp Pride and still use today is probably Robin Oakes' teachings on self-care. Activism can burn you out so quickly, and I got burned out after just a few years. I stepped down as co-president from my LGBT student organization my senior year, and eventually stopped attending meetings altogether by the end of my senior year, the second semester, and hadn't done a whole lot of LGBT activism since then. And as a Reiki practitioner and tarot reader, I work a lot with my clients on slowing down. Because if you don't have the time to heal and the time to re-energize, then you're not going to. Rest and self-care is mandatory. It's not optional. And I had to learn that the hard way at times. But that's something that it's a lesson that keeps coming back to me throughout my life. So thank you, Robin Oakes, for making sure that we all know how to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, I just want to echo that I love Robin. So I'm like, go Robin. And I think, I think to answer your question, in regards to like, how is my life, my fondest memories, what I've learned there, I think was like, that showing up was the first step. That just showing up as your authentic self was your first step in your advocacy journey. And I realized the more unapologetic I was about who I was, and the more unashamed I was of who I was, the more impact I was able to have on people. So walking in your truth, rolling in your truth, living in your truth has been my gateway to success. I did a TEDx talk called Embracing Yourself, Embracing Your Potential, which talked all about that. It's like when you learn to embrace who you are and all of who you are and in your totality, you get to embrace your potential for success. And I really believe in that. And I learned that because I went to Camp Pride.
Something that I've developed from the work at Camp Pride and even as staff with Campus Pride is really understanding the relationship between culture and policy, that they influence one another in really, really big ways. And sometimes we have really direct access for shifting policy and accessing people in power that, and your local elections absolutely matter, and ensuring that there's fair and equitable policy, and that is included within the college system, and ensuring that students have an easeful access to having their name changed. That's policy, and that really shapes culture, and that was really important. And in my work at Campus Pride, the Title IX exemptions were really starting to lift and take hold. And watching that process for campuses like just shamelessly discriminating against students, having the awareness and having the language and the tools and understanding how to address systems of power and institutions of power that continue to operate in ways that are against our communities, and how we really truly infiltrate in the queerest way to ensure that we have representation, and that we have policies that protect for all identities and in all of the ways that we enumerate those identities in policy. And that sometimes just because a policy is updated doesn't mean that the culture has shifted. In North Carolina, that's so true. And for anybody who's watching this from North Carolina, we definitely see that. Even with the School Violence Prevention Act, there's still many schools that aren't honoring the lives of queer and trans folks. And so the acknowledgement of that even though we see that at like a federal government level, it is still relevant when we think about our JC campuses and our universities and colleges across the country, across the world, that we still have to tune into that.
That is wonderful. I also vividly remember my first day orientation at my institution. I was very, very shocked because the question that people asked right after my name is what my pronoun was. And from a country from Asia, Vietnam, we never had a conversation about pronouns. Like it has never occurred in my mind. And LGBT is such like a taboo that we are like we never talk about it. And it's like being closeted my like entire like high school and before that too. And coming to the United States was like very eye opening on like how we should work even more towards embracing identity and just love. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I have a question for your journey towards who you are today. So what impact did Campus Pride and your campus experience have on who you identify yourself as of today?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for sharing that. A couple of things. I'm sure for those of us who have gone through this, remember that bracelet, that orange bracelet, that thread bracelet we all got at the end. I had mine for a long time until I think that the bracelet no longer could not outlive the number of showers and sunbathing that I had put it through. So it naturally faded. It was not even ripped. It just, I was walking one time, I turned around, it was gone. And I think that I saw that to me as a symbolism that the process of initiation had gone through and I was ready for whatever to come next. And I think a lot of times in terms of like how I show up in the world, you know, I'm Black, I'm trans, I'm tall, I'm curvy. Like every single facet of my identity is how I show up. And how I feel like that bracelet kind of reminded me that this is my place. And I don't think there's ever been a moment of doubt. There's ever been a moment of questioning on my purpose, my reason for being, and also using those privileges to continue to pave way through these various conversations. You know, we're at a very crossroads right now that lately I have found myself questioning a lot of things because to me, what is happening in our country, the reckoning, which I feel like we've always had reckoning, but I don't think anybody was paying attention as usual. And to the point where questioning that why do I always have to pick and choose? Do I get to be Black or do I get to be trans? Why can't I be both? And I think that to me right now, I am at that point where I am, you know, gearing ready for battle because, you know, I'm literally running with two swords on both sides because I am going to always bring both. You don't get to pick and choose. Like, you know, within it's the racism and anti-Blackness in the queer world, whether it's the transphobia and homophobia in the Black world. You do not get to decide anymore which one of me you get to have. This ain't Burger King, boo. You ain't gonna have it your way with me. So in a sense, part of me is I'm at that moment in my life where that bracelet has come back and told me, honey, you're going to have to declare, you're going to have to walk with these swords because these people are going to be trying you and you have to stake out your flag in your space. So that's what it means to me.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, honestly. I definitely know that in like my trans world, there's a lot of privilege that comes with being a trans man that you don't get in being a Black trans woman. And I thank you so much for sharing that. I think for me, how Camp Pride really impacted my journey was when I got to Camp Pride, like just lesbian, just living my life, and I really started learning a lot about gender through conversations that I had with different members of the Camp Pride. What the Camp Pride class that I was part of, I guess. That's and I think that's really, I got to learn a lot about what it was like to be trans and what it was like to, not just always be happy with your gender, or like how there's just more than, like gay and lesbian and maybe bi in there somewhere. But I find that the T and just like a lot of the other identities get forgotten along the way, especially in 2013 when we were talking about LGBT. So it was really eye-opening being able to have these conversations and really starting to hear about the T part of LGBT. And I mean, 6 months later, 5 months later, I ended up coming out as trans. And that kind of just ends up following me through the rest of my life, because that's, I really started learning about myself during my Camp Pride time and understanding that this is who I was. And I don't know. I mean, I definitely think it would have happened if I hadn't been to Camp Pride, but it definitely happened a lot faster and with a lot less pain because I had the privilege of being surrounded by people that really cared about me and who cared about just the world in general.
So for me, Camp Pride gave me the opportunity to really explore my authentic self. And it really helped me see the importance of living as your authentic self. And that the concept of yourself changes over time, and that's okay. I don't know. Campus Pride just gave me the space to explore the depth of my identity, the depth of my humanity, and it taught me that changing and morphing, metamorphosizing is while it can be scary, it's never a bad thing. So authenticity is something that really, it was something that camp taught me, and something that has shaped who I am today.
Yeah, I love that, Laura. After Camp Pride, I had a really bad summer the following summer. I nearly died of alcohol poisoning. And what I realized was that in my attempt to be liked by everyone and please everyone, I was suffocating myself. And so I realized that the year after camp, I had found my voice and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this advocacy work. I'm going to make shit happen. Can we curse? I'm sorry. I'm going to make stuff happen. And then I almost died. And then I realized, I was like, something's got to give. And I realized that, like, being true to myself was not just about helping others, but about helping myself. Being true to myself and being authentic and being courageous in my leadership was really a big deal. So I ran a company for 10 years, a dance company for disabled and non-disabled dancers. I started that when I was 17 years old. And then I left that after 10 years. And now I'm launching a wellness brand around my podcast called Marking the Path. And I think the way I lead people now is so influenced, I should say, by my experience at Camp Pride. Like the type of leader I want to show up as, the advocacy leader I want to show up as, the boss I want to show up as. All of that has been because of my experience at Camp Pride, and just recognizing how, like, when I bring my whole self to the table, there's no separating my queerness from my gender nonconformingness, from my crippledness, from my brownness. I am all of those things in totality. And so I think that when you bring your whole self to the table, or you bring your whole self to any room you walk into, you can change lives.
Yeah, Mark, what you and Elena both shared, it's that camp really facilitated that big hug for all of the parts that we brought with us. And for me, it was the first time that I really witnessed that. That was my first like exclusively queer space that I had really ever been in before. And as a young person, I was like, oh, this is a real thing, and it's not in a bar. Like, okay, we can get together and do stuff. And that was really meaningful to me. And Alen, your words just spoke to me that that leading this work with a sword in each hand, and fighting for all of our identities, and then growing more arms on your back to fight for the identities of your peers and fellows. And that's what it really feels like sometimes. And to return back to this piece of self-care, that there's got to be a time to just set the swords down, and take a walk. And sometimes, and especially right now, it's not possible. Like, I really have to check my friends on meeting up. They want to hang out, and then they're like, so tell me, how long have you identified as non-binary? And like, I'm off the clock right now. Like, can I just be like, can you just know that that's a part of who I am, and just like use my pronouns, and let's just eat these Doritos? Because that's what I need right now. I just need to eat Married at First Sight and eat these Doritos and chill. And sometimes it just feels like there's not a time to clock out. And the work at Camp Pride really helped me see that this is a lifelong journey. This is a lifelong platform, and that leadership takes many forms. And it looks like using our bodies in the fight, and it looks like using our dollars in the fight, and it looks like changing policy, and it looks like using our minds and our education to educate our community, and those that don't get it yet, that aren't there yet. And guess what? They're listening now, right? They're listening now.
Thank you so much for your sharing your experience. So I know that a lot of our listeners, a lot of youths that attend Camp Pride are really eager to know about your experience regarding institution at your college, at your university, at your academic institution. So were you involved in doing a lot of LGBTQ activism, changing policies at your school? And do you have any tips or any advice to those youngsters that still want to do much more to improve their campus?
Well, first of all, I have to disclose that I was never, active or part of any sort of like activism on campus. I think I was very intentional because being in a PWI environment, I did not want to be sort of like the Black and queer one that's here to educate everybody. So I was, a social queen who just kind of just went with the flow. But I think what's happened, it's like usually, even though for me, unfortunately, when I'm trying to hide is when things come, right off my lap out of nowhere. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not, we're not doing this. So I kind of always had this rebel push and pull, because a lot of time, it's, you go through that transition of culture shock when you attend college, whether it's racially, whether it's economic, whether it's, class, you have to go through that transition and realize, oh my God, like, some people just are oblivious. Some people have just out of this world. And then, you enter an environment of academia where, everybody's all stuffy and has gray hair because, rather than having fun, they went to go get PhDs for no reason because none of these things matter. And they could have just told us that not to buy the textbook, but nobody's going to tell us that. So that was that experience for me. And I think that, sometime I ended up realizing that there's no difference between my activism and my life. It kind of goes hand and through because living in America. Yeah, so my existence is an activism. I think my existence waking up every day is an act of defiance. Like every time I open my mouth and, I just am that activism, and there is nowhere for me to hide and pretend that, I'm not supposed to get involved. And I think for our young people, our incredibly talented young people, which I could not even imagine what his life is going on right now, going through college virtually in a pandemic, as all of us is struggling through all of this. And, when you thought that you had that special moment to be away, to be yourself on your campus, and now you have to be confined with sometimes very difficult situation because nobody understands you. I've been there, and know that. Just know that time is on your side. Time is on your side. By the time you look, this will pass, and then you get to set up your own environment and get to create the form of activism in the world you want to live in. And I want to plug with this in terms of looking at just like in pop culture. Pose have been life-changing for me. When we all talk about self-care, I like to think of self-care, as me traveling and get away from this country, a couple of times a year, like, bye. But Pose has sort of been that, just because I want people to go and take a look. If they had to put up through this, even though part of it is very fictitious, we can get through what we're going through. And I just want to praise, the ancestors, the ones who had to walk the streets, make a couple of coins to pay rent, to build that foundation, to keep their presence alive so there's no erasure of our existence. So I would say that in terms of activism is, as long that you are living, you are activism with your being.
So for me, I think I was involved in the LGBT Center at Rutgers, and I think the biggest part of it for me, because again, Rutgers was fairly open-minded at the time, and since then, even more things have come into play that's made it even more open-minded. I mean, I haven't been there in a while, so hopefully it has stayed the way it is. But I think it was really about just creating a center that was really open for the community, that anyone could be part of, like no matter what your identity was, no matter what your sexual orientation, what your race, what your gender identity was, you were welcome. You were part of this family that was there. And I was lucky from the beginning of me starting college in 2012, I was able to work at the center and really get to know a lot of the people as they came into Rutgers and started finding themselves. So I think that's the activism that I was part of. It wasn't so much in changing policy, but of just really creating a space for everyone to be part of. And then once I graduated, I think sometimes, much like it was being said, just existing kind of does become its own activism, because you're able to educate people. As people meet me throughout my career and like throughout my life, I get to be like, hey, I'm trans. Like, this is what my community's like. This is what, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but this is me. And this is like, there is more than just what you think of the world. And I think I've gotten really lucky to be able to open some minds. I definitely think there's other ones that have not opened as much, but there's always dialogue and being privileged and being able to really communicate my true self. And hope, and like, there's a lot of people out there that are very open to it. The same way that there's people that are not. But I try to very much focus on the ones that are open and the people that I can change their minds, or I can broaden their minds to the community as a whole. So that, I do find that that's how things start changing. It's just by having conversations and really being able to exist as your true self and having people love you for it.
Well said. So the activism on my campus was similar to what Aiden was saying. It was more focused on creating a community and a safe space for LGBT students and less focused on policy changing. Because again, I was at a Catholic university, and the LGBT student organization, when I first joined, was struggling. It was very small. A lot of people didn't know about it. They didn't do a whole lot on campus. So I had focused a lot on making the group's presence known. And Campus Pride really gave me the tools to do that. We had our first Pride Parade on campus. We had National Coming Out Week, not just a day, which was unheard of at our campus. We had panels, we educated faculty and staff, and it changed the environment. And my advice for campers today, I guess, is be willing to be uncomfortable and to make people uncomfortable. Because this is not easy work. You're going to be uncomfortable yourself because you're going to be, whether it's challenged by faculty and staff, like, no, you can't do that, or it's challenged by other students and colleagues in, hey, what you said was problematic, or that's a harmful belief to hold, and here's why. And you'll be making other people uncomfortable because not everyone is educated on LGBT issues and the LGBT community. Being uncomfortable is part of growth. So if you want things to change, you have to be open to being uncomfortable and be open to making people uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I'll start with my advice. In the words of Audre Lorde, your silence will not protect you. I think it's really, for some people, silence seems to be protective. But what I've learned in my experience is that my silence was suffocating, and that by the time I began to speak my truth and walk in my truth and embrace my truth, that I've had all these opportunities open up around me. And I think the biggest advice that, again, your silence will not protect you. It's worth leaning into the discomfort of uncertainty and risk and vulnerability if that means being free.
Yeah, because of the intersection of faith and LGBTQ identities, much like what Laura was sharing, the experience that I had at my school actually moved far beyond my school. I was able to get networked in with other students. The Seventh-day Adventist educational system has 13 sibling schools across the country. And so I had discovered that other students at these sibling colleges were experiencing the same thing. And so we came together and created a nonprofit organization to fundraise for these students who were being denied access to funds on their campus. I had no intentions of doing that level of work and filing a 501c3 at age 19. It seemed like I was still very young. And what I got from that was go bigger. What else? And really kind of challenging myself to see. And I got to work for a global organization, again, at that intersection of Seventh-day Adventism and queer identity, serving young people across the world. I wouldn't have believed in myself if Camp Pride hadn't created that foundation for me to believe in myself. And I feel like there's a little enamel pin somewhere that say I believe. And when I continued my journey, I was able to work with Campus Pride for many years. And then I went to DC during the 2016 election, and I came back to Charlotte after that, and where I worked for a queer youth organization, and now doing this statewide work. And I just tracked back, and I'm 31 years old now, and I have over a decade of experience organizing on my resume. And I have to sit back and really admire that work and admire the ancestors and the elders that have come before us in this work. And to know that I can set all of my own egos aside and just know that truly this work is paving the way for so many people. And so for all of the folks watching, anything is possible. And as hard as you're working, and even if you don't reach those wins, we need you. We need you. It is lifelong work. It absolutely is, and it is worth every single minute of it. And if you feel like you can't, take a step back and somebody will step up. And that's the community that we're up for creating.
Thank you so much for such insightful words. I bet these young listeners must be so excited and so weird up to come back to school and do more activism in their school. So to wrap up, do you have any advice you would give to Camp Pride participants this year?
Yes, as we're wrapping up this conversation, I think there is a moment that I want to share with you all. I'm not sure if other people might have experienced this. Because going to camp and the camp experience was euphoric and sort of a utopia, the readjustment upon exiting camp was difficult. I cried so much for the 2.5-hour flight from Nashville to Fort Lauderdale. I was crying, did not know why I was crying, but I remember saying to myself, no one's going to understand me. For what I've just experienced, only those who have partaken have the awareness. And I think that it's also necessary to understand that when you've gone through a specific journey, an experience like this, as you're taking time to appreciate everything around you, that prepare yourself for those times, because it was not part of the agenda. It was not part of the exiting. I mean, the session itself was emotional itself, but it continued on. And I think that, and as I look back in these different times, I think of that experience. I think of the incredible, amazing leaders that I met from all walks of life, from all shades of the rainbow, from all the colors of the palettes. And I know that there is more that I have that connects me than differentiates me. And I want to end to our leaders as, they go on to their journeys and know that, they're not alone. Number one, they're not alone. We might have not met in person, but I believe that connection, that affiliation will last a lifetime. And that, to remind themselves that in this work, it is not a race, but a marathon. It is a marathon, it's not a race. The end goal can be different and can be interpreted in so many ways for so many different people. When you start unpeeling the onions of all the layers of intersectionality, I mean, you could spend thousands of years still unpeeling. But as much as our movement, unfortunately, has become so corporatized and has taken away some of our actual pain and misery and kind of put just a glow of like merchandise and marketing on it. And I think now it might be time for us to reclaim back what's ours. Reclaiming back what is ours, what we have created, what is for our individuals, because at the end of the day, I say to them that this is ours. Like, this is not, whether it's our lingo, whether it's everything that we have created, which has been commercialized, it is our role to take it back. It's ours. It cannot be, you know, on shirts, you making money off of it, but the money's not coming in our pockets, in our organization. We need to take back our control of our identity, our history, and our culture, because we do have a culture. We do have, you know, a very strong culture considering how much we influence the rest of the world. And in that sense, remember, always say to ourselves, and the famous great words of Marsha P. Johnson, no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. We want liberation. I want liberation. And that liberation is that goal that we strive, us as a collective, with all of our intersectionalities. Thank you.
Yeah, I honestly think you said it all. That's amazing advice. I think the advice I would give for all the Camp Pride people right now would be to really make connections. I know it's hard with the pandemic going on, but I think really getting to know the people that you're going to this, you know, digital Camp Pride with is really important, because these are people that will continue helping you throughout your life. Like, you know, you can meet your best friend, you don't know. There's such a good opportunity to get to know people within your own community and get to know different, like you were saying, like the different shades of the rainbow and just different intersectionalities that so many of Camp Pride has. And I would really take advantage of being able to have conversations and being able to connect with people, so that you can take that on. And, you know, you don't know who's going to help you at your campus when you go back. Maybe you could work together someday. Connections are so important, especially now that we're all so separate, that it really taking advantage of the place that you are going to be in, and this opportunity is really important.
I would say trust the process. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to feel uncomfortable at times. Trust it, lean into it, explore why something makes you uncomfortable. That's really the only way we see growth, we see change, the only way we see progress. So trust.
I would say, in wrapping up, that you are enough. Your effort is enough. Your life is worthy of love and belonging. You are the wilderness. Be brave.
Yeah, there's so much to say. And I still have my brown paper bags of notes from other campers, and why I keep them is the reminder to keep going. I read them in moments that I do feel down and uncertain and unseen, and the piece of advice that I offer is to show that appreciation. And you don't have to have a physical brown paper bag to take with you. This can happen through text, by phone calls, on Zoom and GroupMe and Signal and all of these other platforms that we have now, and that we show appreciation and then say thanks. And and we must continue to acknowledge each other, and that helps us build relationship. Like, I want you to see me and know me, and in appreciating one another and seeing each other, it helps. I mean, it's electric. And people remember that. I remember when people write thank yous and when they acknowledge the work, because this is not easy, especially coming from other members of the community. Like, hey, I see you, fam, out there, you know, towing the line. And that it really means a lot. And in that space too, like, be creative. J. Mace III has played a really big role in me understanding how I can be expressive, both as a means of appreciation and a means of self-care. Yeah, so be fully expressed and show your appreciation to the world around you and the people working so hard to build this path for you.
Thank you so much. Wow, time really flies. This has been amazing. It has been so informative to me, and I know that everyone watching to learn about each of you in Campfire would be really appreciate of you too. Please help me thank all of them by sending some hearts or likes in the messages as we say goodbye. Again, thank you so much, and we really appreciate your time. Hi, it's me again. So Campus Pride really appreciates each and every one of our panelists. Thank you all for participating in this panel and for your ongoing support of Campus Pride. Thank you also to everyone who is watching and enjoying Camp Pride. It was the first and is the oldest camp for LGBTQ plus college students in the country, building future leaders for 14 years. Thank you so much for enjoying us. Bye-bye.